and my daughter comes in and starts speaking in English perfectly and says, "Mommy, Daddy said to give this to the guests." And our friend it was like in the cartoons, the jaw dropping, the eyes popping out. And that was absolutely hilarious. And I think that situation summed up the whole adventure.
Hey everyone, welcome to Live Your Language, tips and inspiration for your bilingual life. I'm Stephanie, a PhD student in second language acquisition and a mother to two children that I'm raising bilingually in my non-native language French. Have you ever wondered whether your decision to raise a child bilingually is going to work out in the end? Have you ever wished that you could just see into the future and anticipate all of those issues that you might encounter down the line? Well, I have definitely thought that, which is why I was so excited when I came across the Minority Language Home blog. This blog is written by Amy, who is living in France and raising her children to be not bilingual but trilingual in her non-native language English and her husband's native language of Spanish. One of the reasons I knew I had to reach out to Amy is because she has successfully raised trilingual kids, or at least her oldest is 9 and her youngest is 5. So she's a lot further along in her journey than a lot of us are. So we have a lot to learn from her, and I knew that when I learned that she was a non-native speaker of English that I really had to speak with her. I wish I could include all of the amazing tidbits of information that she told me during this conversation. I decided to summarize just a handful of points in this video. So thank you, Amy, for graciously accepting my request to interview and for sharing your knowledge with those of us who are really early in our bilingual journey. I encourage you all to check out her blog. I'll put all the information below, including links to some of my favorite articles that she's written. And definitely check it out. It's just chock full of so much good information from somebody who has been there and seen it and done it before. So the strategy that Amy is using in her house is the minority language at home strategy with 2 languages, which means that in their house they only speak minority languages. They live in France, so Spanish and English are the minority languages. Amy speaks English with her children, and her husband, who, as I mentioned, is from Spain, speaks Spanish with them. They get the majority language at school, where they attend just regular French schools, so no bilingual schools there. So they use an OPAL method, but because both of the languages are minority languages, it's also minority language at home. This sets a scene for what is going to be a really great conversation, so sit down and take note of all of the great information and advice that Amy has to give us today. Bilingual parenting is a marathon, not a sprint. And the early stages before the child is speaking can be some of the most difficult because no one can see any results yet, including you. Which means not only are you surrounded by naysayers and some of the skepticism that the people around you may be expressing, but you're also surrounded by your own doubts and insecurities. Amy tells us to take heart, and if you're really 100% committed to this lifestyle, just hang on until the child is about 3 or maybe 4 and they're able to have an actual conversation. Why not at that point then decide if you want to stick with it and keep going?
At the beginning, it's very difficult when the child doesn't speak. And that's a difficulty. People only see the parents speaking. A lot of patience and perseverance. They're the key words, really. Perseverance. It pays off. It really does pay off. But it's very slow, as we said, until your child really starts speaking at 3, 4, having proper conversations. It's very long, and there are loads of naysayers on the way that will be bringing you down on the way. So just a lot of patience. Keep going, don't stop, even if in doubt, keep going, because if you stop, it will not work out. But if you persevere, you're likely to see a result at the end of the day. But when we stop, that's the end of it. There'll be no results. So just keep going. Give yourself, the benefit of the doubt. Take it, keep going till at least the age where your child starts speaking, and you'll see it for yourself. And then decide whether if that's what you want. If the result is up to what, you expected, then you continue. Or if you're disappointed and you feel it's not worth all the efforts, then make the decision.
She goes on to talk about one particularly skeptical friend realized that her children were perfectly bilingual and their reaction.
We had a friend he wasn't very convinced about our bilingual adventure. We could feel it. We never went into depth with him, but we could feel he was very skeptical. And that was we shifted to minority languages at home in August. And I think it was in December or January of that year, we had that friend over for dinner. And I was talking to him in the living room, and my husband was in the kitchen and gave to my eldest a plate to bring to the table. And my daughter comes in and starts speaking in English perfectly and says, "Mommy, Daddy said to give this to the guests." And our friend it was like in the cartoons, the jaw dropping, the eyes popping out. And that was absolutely hilarious. And I think that situation summed up the whole adventure. When people don't see the child responding, answering back in the language, and that person doesn't believe, that a small child can handle 2-3 languages, they just think you're a bit, a bit crazy. And then when they actually see the child speaking in the language, they're just in awe. They're like, what? It's basically, how can such a small child speak a language when I can't, kind of. It was a bit like that situation.
It also helps to keep the long-term goals in mind. So I grew up a lot of you, as just a monolingual child, and I was kind of angry about it and sad that I never spoke another language. She keeps this in mind, and she knows that her kids will thank her one day in the long run, even if they resist now.
And for her in the first place, because I've told her that, I said, I've got to be hard, because if I don't do it now, when you'll be 18, you'll tell me that I was a naughty mommy. I didn't, make the effort to teach you Spanish and English. So I tell her that. And there's a little sister behind that I want also to protect, in the sense I was protect of the bad influence. We'll see. She can have, she can change her mind too, but, in a few years' time, but we'll see then. At the moment, she's not resisting.
The second takeaway from our conversation is to be consistent and committed.
And it's very difficult because you have to be consistent. You have to speak all the time in your chosen language. So that means outdoors too. And I found that difficult. And I did it at the beginning. I did it. And with hindsight, it was a mistake, because your child feels that there's something, almost shameful about speaking English in public, in my case. So you have to really, this is your choice of lifestyle. This is your choice of education. Nobody has a say in it. I mean, some people choose, a Montessori education. Others will choose another kind of education. Well, you chose bilingual education, so be strong about it.
Amy suggests that those who are kind of on the fence about whether or not to raise their child bilingually, especially in their non-native language, go for it. But when you do, you have to be 100% ready to commit.
If you're going to do it, if you hesitate, just make sure that you're ready to commit. I would say go for it, that's for sure. But be ready to commit. As you said, it's a lifestyle. That's exactly how I say it all the time. It's a lifestyle. So if you choose it, got to do it wholeheartedly, because your child will feel it. If you don't, if you switch to the majority language, very regularly, then eventually your child will feel there's no important. Your minority language is not important. So you really need to, stick to your plan, whatever it is. Stick to it. Stick to your language. Stick, to how you want to organize it. So really. Commit yourself.
Okay, thank you all so much for listening to my summary of my conversation with Amy. I hope that you got as much from this as I did.